Welcome back to the Manager's Mic. I'm your host, Paul Leon. So for those who do not know me, I have over 5 years of consultative training experience. I've worked with over 2,000 different people, over 50 small businesses, and my training systems actually influence over $100 million in revenue. So I'm going to talk to you today about the 3 beliefs I have around leveraging mentorship. So the first thing I want to get into is my first belief is you should leverage mentorship to speed up momentum that is already in motion. And let me explain what I mean by that. So when I talk about speed up momentum that's already in motion, you should always think about what you're doing already and how you can use mentorship. So one person who's been a big influence in my life, his name is Joe Peachy, he's a good guy. So when I first got into sales, one of the things I struggled with was scripting. I think a lot of people struggle with scripting. And I remember with him, I had called him when I was in between appointments. And one of my first sales jobs was actually selling door-to-door corporate gym memberships, accounting offices, little things like that. And I remember I talked to him and I was like, hey, here's my script. Here's what I'm saying. And I remember he said, no, you don't want to say that. You kind of want to change your value proposition. I said, I don't really know what that is. And he coached me on like the 3 core questions of a call, like not going right into your pitch, but asking, is this a good time? Things that most people don't do on a call. The reason for your call, and then going right into your ask with an end result statement that's what's in it for the customer. So that's like an example of how you can speed up momentum already in motion, because I was already going door to door. I was already doing those things. The second belief I have around leveraging mentorship is a mentor or somebody you work with should be there to reduce mistakes that are in reality with data. Now, let me explain what I mean by mistakes. Mistakes are worth nothing. And what I mean by that is, I think a lot of the time we go after a new project, there's always this bad habit. And I've fallen into this trap too, me personally. I don't want to point fingers. But this bad habit of saying like, this won't work because of this. And a lot of it's personal bias versus let's do the volume of work and then let's look at the mistakes along with the data. So for example, if going back to the script example, if we use this script against 30 appointments and we book 3 appointments out of 30 with a 10% success rate, that tells us we need to change. That's an example of how we want to reduce mistakes we found reality with data, how we can leverage that mentorship. So then you go back to your mentor or somebody you trust to kind of help you with that. That's the second thing that I would encourage you to think about when you want to leverage mentorship for yourself. And the third thing I'm going to speak to is mentorship should not be a replacement for motivation. Now, I want to say this again because I think it's one that I have fallen into the trap too, where mentorship should not replace motivation. I'm pretty open about the fact that I see a therapist for my own mental strength, for maintenance and stuff like that. And I mention that because I grew up in a culture where seeing a therapist was as a sign of weakness. A lot of people in my family, you don't know this, a lot of people don't know this, they survived the dictatorship during the Fidel Castro era. And during that time, people who went to see a therapist when he was taking over Cuba, he'd actually would put them in straitjackets and throw them in prison. Or so my family told me when they had survived that pain. And a little more about that, my mother was the oldest of several kids, and she had to actually go to Mexico, get her family out, one by one, her brothers and sisters. And my mom's actually a very inspiring story. However, the thing that was challenging, that what carried from that experience was a lot of victim statements that came from that experience. And when I was growing up, I had this bad habit where I would do things more for the approval of others. So stay with me, help connect the dots. A mentor should not be the spark. We always have to be the spark for what we want, for where we're going. It should not, they should be able to put fuel on the fire to help going with whatever that spark may be. So I'll give you an example. I remember we was doing a day of consultations, and I was with my old mentor, Joe. And I remember he went out, and we started around 10 o'clock and went till about 7 or 8 at night. And we had back-to-back meetings. And all it was this day was just to kind of do consultations of watching what he did. I think it's a very powerful way to coach someone. I remember even at late at night, we were driving back, and he goes, it's my birthday. I said, I didn't know it was your birthday. He says, I'm not telling you that because I want you to know that even on my birthday, I wanted you to come with me on all these consultations, because birthdays I've always struggled with, Paul, and speaking from Joe's perspective, because it's about me, and I've struggled with about me because I want it to be about them. And he goes, and I can tell that you're having issues with this line of work, like you're struggling with sales currently. And I have confessed to him. I said, I am. I said, it's not that I don't love sales. I do. It's what allowed me to help my family dramatically when I went through a tough time. But I've always had this itch to want to go back to college. And he goes, I think you should do just that. And going back to college later in life financially can be very scary. Having to relearn subjects like algebra and all those things, those core fundamentals, when you're already in your late 20s, going to your 30s, at least for me, from my fear, was this weird belief I had that it was too late. And he goes, alternative education is not a replacement for education. Because I was listening to CDs, and this is how dating myself here. I was reading a book for 15 minutes a day. I was associated with the top performers, and I was a top performer. But he said that to me because even though he knew it would be a harder journey to go back to college while working, he knew that's what I wanted. And he was always somebody who could fall on the sword and lift others off their sword so they could have relief and start to close those wounds. And I mentioned that story because I think it's a core memory I have as to why I went back to college, why I said, yes, let me do this. And I was able to leverage that relationship, that mentorship on a personal level, not leverage from the sake of manipulation. I think influence is about helping someone else. Manipulation is about controlling someone else for your own gain. And what I liked about my old mentor, Joe, was that he was more about influence, not manipulation. And that's a subtle difference, but if you can really distinguish between what I just said, I think you're going to feel a huge impact if you can make that part of your paradigm and brainwashing. Everything's brainwashing, Some people brainwash with Marvel movies, Minecraft. Me personally, I love all that stuff. I like entertainment. Probably one of my guilty pleasures is Saturday night. I like to have a couple friends where I play online games with. That time has been limited because my priority is my family. But I want you to think about this topic. And I want you to ask yourself, am I leveraging mentorship for a need of approval first? Am I going to therapy to enable excuses, or am I going in with goals that I want to help adjust? One more micro story. My current therapist, I remember I was having a meeting with her and I was just like I was really projecting, and I always love therapists personally. I think they do God's work. And we were going in there and she had enough rapport to say this, but she goes, you haven't mastered life skills. I said, excuse me? And she goes, you're still letting these particular people take up your headspace. When are we going to work together to free it up so you can give that back more to your wife? Give that back more to your kids. Give that headspace more to your initiatives and career goals. Because the more time we spend on this, if you were to make, and she said this very specifically, if you were to look at it from a data perspective and you were to map out how much time you spent dwelling on what others thought or these conspiracy theories, how much time would be on that graph? That really stayed with me. And I hope it stays with you, that if you're struggling with anything I just told you, if you were to map it out from a data perspective, how much time we spent dwelling or the conspiracy theories we have, would you be happy on a percentage basis where that mental energy went? And that's something for you to answer. It's not something for me to answer. Just being transparent with you. So if I can give you anything in this podcast, is think about these 3 beliefs to leverage mentorship. Number 1, speed up. It should speed up momentum that is already in motion. That's how you leverage mentorship. 2, it should reduce mistakes found in reality with data. Number 3, don't let mentorship be a replacement for motivation. If you're struggling or any of these 3 areas are those pinch points that we want to release, pick one. Just pick one. And in the next 72 hours, apply it so you can improve your management style to be stronger in your day to day.